For this video, I thought it would be fun to ask ChatGPT who it thought the strongest heroes and Marvel champions were. And the results were very interesting. But before I go over that, if you can take a second to like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it a lot. And then after the video, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks. Coming in at number 10 is StarLord. I was delighted to see this because StarLord is one of my favorite heroes in the game. Probably is my favorite hero in the game, along with Phoenix. Recently, I've been enjoying StarLord more. And a lot of people don't think he deserves to be in the top 10, but the decks that I've played for him have been very strong. And, well, let's just see what ChatGPT says. So, ChatGPT says, StarLord's ability to play cards for reduced cost at the risk of drawing encounter cards is high risk, high reward. His powerful leadership cards and synergy with allies make him a strong choice in multiplayer games. So that's really interesting. So the part about having powerful leadership cards and synergy with allies is probably because of these cards that came with him. The Leader of the Guardians, Nowhere, and Blaze of Glory. So the Leader of the Guardians allow him to give each Guardian character he controls +1 thwart. But you can see here that on his hero side, the first line of text is each ally you control gains the Guardian trait. So that means that you can play any ally you want, and then their Guardian have that trait, and then will benefit from cards like Leader of the Guardians and Blaze of Glory. Blaze of Glory specifically is incredibly strong for finishing the game. Each Guardian character gets +2 thwart and +2 attack this phase. At the end of this phase, deal 1 damage to each Guardian character. So great for final pushes, and that combos extremely well with StarLord's Daring Escape card, which allows him to deal himself an encounter card, ready your hero, and then draw a card. So StarLord will be attacking for 4 every time when you play Blaze of Glory on that turn. And then also, the allies are all going to get +2 to their attack. So if you can get like a couple allies out and Blaze of Glory, that's enough to finish off like most villains in the game. So for instance, in my last 2 gameplay videos I played StarLord against Ronin and Venom Goblin, and both of them just one-shot the villain basically. Venom Goblin was only a 2-turn game, where on turn 2 with no setup, I was able to do 34 damage, and that was because of Blaze of Glory and Daring Escape. The other card I think worth mentioning here is Nowhere. Nowhere says play only if your identity has the Guardian trait and increase your ally limit by 1. So increasing the ally limit by 1 is already a really strong effect. And then it also has a response that says after a player plays a Guardian ally, exhaust Nowhere and that player draws 1 card, which combos extremely well with his ability to make each ally you control have the Guardian trait. So for instance, you can play Nick Fury. Nick Fury will come in, let you draw 3 cards, then you can exhaust Nowhere and draw 4. So incredible value. And then also if you have Blaze of Glory, Nick Fury can like attack for 4 even. So combos like that are absolutely crazy and allow him to end games really easily. And when you have a bunch of encounter cards in front of you and you play your sliding shot, it can easily deal over 10 damage. So like in that game against Venom Goblin that I mentioned, my sliding shot, just 1 3-cost event, did 15 damage, which amazing. And it also makes a point to say that it makes him a strong choice in multiplayer games, which is interesting because a lot of people think that StarLord is just like only good at rushing down the villain, which he is incredibly good at that. But if you lean into the Leader of the Guardians and Nowhere, and then you just focus on controlling the board by thwarting all the side schemes and then saving up for final push, that can be really strong too. So I think StarLord is definitely deserving of a top 10, no question in my mind. And StarLord is the GOAT. ChatGPT understands this. And yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. I just wish ChatGPT would have said that StarLord is number 1, but you can't always get everything that you want. Now on to the number 9 spot. And I was surprised to see Black Widow here. So let's see what ChatGPT justifies this with. It says, Black Widow excels in controlling the board with her preparation cards. Her ability to prevent threats and respond to encounter cards with Widow's Bite and Grappling Hook makes her a strategic powerhouse. So this whole strategic powerhouse thing, definitely agree. Black Widow is a really interesting character to play, and you really have to plan around what the villain's going to do and be familiar with what the villain does to get full use out of the preparations. So let's see what Widow's Bite are and Grappling Hook, since ChatGPT thought it was important to mention these cards by name. So, Widow's Bite. After a minion enters play, discard Widow's Bite, deal 2 damage to that minion, and stun it. Which, that if you've ever played things like Claw, for instance, Claw brings in those Masters of Evil minions, and then if you can immediately deal 2 damage to it and stun it, that's extremely valuable. Because minions are some of the hardest cards to deal with in the game if your hero doesn't have access to like medium damage, for instance. Because like a 5 health minion, like with her 2 attack, it would take 3 attacks to take that out. So this 2 damage and stun lets you ignore the minion for 1 round and gets you a jump start on doing the damage. And then another important thing to note about these preparation cards is that when you put them down, you can wait to use them till the optimal moment, whereas events don't have that luxury. So if this was an event that just said deal 2 damage to a minion and stun it, that wouldn't be as good because because if there's not a minion out, it's useless. But with Black Widow, you can prepare for that. And then the hero response is after you trigger the ability of a preparation card you control, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So this Widow's Bite is going to deal 2 damage and stun it, trigger Widowmaker to deal 1 damage, and then so it's 3 damage plus a stun on the minions when they come out. So that 5 health minion I was mentioning as an example, Black Widow can just attack for 2, take it out. So that's really interesting. Grappling Hook, the other one that ChatGPT mentioned by name. When you reveal a treachery card, discard Grappling Hook, cancel the effects of that treachery, and discard it. So again, putting this down, letting you choose. Notice this is a hero interrupt, not a force interrupt. You get to choose which one you want to cancel. So canceling treacheries obviously is really good because, like Shadow of the Past, for instance, you don't want to deal with that. So if you have Grappling Hook out, you can just cancel the when revealed effects, discard it, and then that will trigger Widowmaker to deal a damage. Really fun here. If you can get set up to where you have all of her upgrades and preparations out, that it's really fun. You feel like you're just beating the villain before they get to do anything, which really leans into her idea of being a spy. And then here's an aspect card I wanted to mention because I really like this card. Counterintelligence, interrupt. When any amount of threat would be placed on the main scheme, discard counterintelligence, prevent 3 of that threat. That's really important because it allows you to flip into alter ego. You don't have to worry about losing the main scheme to an advance because if the advance comes out, counterintelligence can counter that. Really, really thematic, really fun. I'm not as sure about Black Widow being up here. I personally wouldn't rate her up here, just because, again, you have to prepare for the villain, right? So if the villain's dishing out a lot of stuff to you right at the beginning, Black Widow can get like outpaced a little bit. But she's definitely really fun, and I think with the correct builds and playing her correctly, she can be very strong. So, and ChatGPT says her ability to prevent threats and respond to encounter cards specifically, which a great way of putting it because encounter cards are how you lose, right? So discarding them, it's good. I don't know if she's like top 10 in my opinion, but you know, we'll see. ChatGPT, I'm not really mad about this one. Like, I mean, you could argue that, oh, other heroes are stronger than Black Widow, but it makes a pretty solid case for her. Like, especially in like a multiplayer game, having Black Widow around to like cancel that important treachery and remove threat from the scheme can be really nice. Now on to the number 8 spot, Iron Man. So it says that Iron Man's setup takes time, but once he has his suit pieces in place, he becomes incredibly powerful. His ability to stay in hero form for extended periods and deal consistent damage makes him a top-tier hero. So this is like actually a really interesting take on Iron Man's power to me, because most of the time you're thinking like, I'm playing Iron Man, so I'm going to have to stay in alter ego for a long time. And that's like the negative people have about him. But then it made me think of the Mark V armor, giving Iron Man +6 hit points, bringing him all the way up to 15, and then the boots also give you +1. So you can get up to 17 health, which is only one less than Hulk's printed hit points, which is really good. Like that point of once he's set up, he can stay in hero form for a long time is a really interesting way that he is powerful that I hadn't really considered when I was thinking about his power. So I'm glad ChatGPT brought that up. And then it mentions uh, deal consistent damage, which made me think of the powered gauntlets. So every turn you'll be able to deal 2 damage. You have 2 of them, so it's like 4 damage that you can bring out. And then Supersonic Punch is just a 2 for 8. And then he also has the Repulsor Blast, which if you build around energy resources can be a big chunk of damage for 1 cost. So, I'm not really mad about this either. Like, Iron Man, definitely a very strong hero when he is set up. And it seems like from ChatGPT's perspective here, it was considering like Iron Man as being set up. It might have, I think it undervalued because it says like the setup takes time, but once he has his suit pieces in place, he becomes incredibly powerful. So from a solo perspective, that's not going to be that great. But if you're in like a 3 or 4 player game, Iron Man, I wouldn't argue with Iron Man being in the top 10 at all. Iron Man is absolutely crazy in multiplayer games. So again, ChatGPT seems pretty based here. Not going to argue with it. Now on to the number 7 place. It chose Captain America, America's soldier. Captain America's I can do this all day ability to ready him. Captain America's I can do this all day ability to ready himself and strong defensive capabilities with cards like Shield Block and Shield Toss make him a well-rounded and powerful hero. So this is interesting. Like I definitely agree that I can do this all day ability and readying when every single turn, like you have the option of just discarding a card to get a basic activation from him is very powerful, especially since with his shield, he has +1 defense and retaliate. So you're encouraged to defend on your turn, on the villain's turn. So then you can discard a card and then actually activate again on your turn. That's very good. It mentions the strong defensive capabilities of Shield Block and Shield Toss. So Shield Block says when you take any amount of damage, exhaust Captain America's shield, prevent all that. That makes sense. 0 cost card that lets you just exhaust the shield and then not take any damage. Very similar to like Backflip, for instance, in Spider-Man's kit. Really good. And also the shield doesn't have an exhaust ability, so it's not like it's very unlikely that your shield is exhausted for some reason. So this is essentially just the same card that Spider-Man has, which I think everyone considers that to be like the best defensive card in the game. And Cap also basically has the same card. Shield Toss, on the other hand, says discard X cards from your hand, then return Captain America's shield from play to your hand and deal 4 damage to X enemies. So that's a really interesting one, because it mentions it as a defensive card, which it obviously seems like offense, right? But offense, that brings up an interesting point, because offense is taking out the villain. Like, you win by dealing damage to the villain. Most of the time when you're taking out minions, you're not really actually playing offense. You're playing defense because you're trying to preserve your HP and make sure the minions don't just overrun you. So I think that's a really interesting way to look at Shield Toss, where most people, I think, including myself, if I just was asked about it off the cuff, would say that Shield Toss is an offensive card because it's an attack event. But ChatGPT is saying that it's actually best as a defense event, which is really interesting. I like that. I like that take. Brings up an interesting point that I maybe wouldn't have considered if I hadn't asked. Now, on to number 6. Even stronger than Captain America, we have Hulk. And you know what? Hulk is strongest there is. Nothing else to say. Enough said. But anyways, while Hulk can be inconsistent, his raw damage output is unmatched. Cards like Hulk Smash can deal massive damage, and his high health pool allows him to soak up a lot of damage. It's definitely right about these things. Hulk Smash deals massive damage, and the high health pool is a very strong part of playing Hulk that people might overlook. I don't know. I don't know if people actually do, but having 18 health printed is a really big deal, especially when you have a movable object giving you +4 and retaliate. Brings you all the way up to 22 health. Like that's more than a lot of villains have on their side on certain sides. And against low health matchups on standard, that's almost as much as both sides of the villain have. Very strong. And then Hulk Smash gives you +10 to that basic attack. And if you paid with all physicals, it gets overkill, which Limitless Strength is a resource he has available to him that allows you to pay for Hulk Smash. So there's been an interesting build that I've seen. I saw Web Warrior Fanatic do it against Magneto with Hulk, where the idea was you play Limitless Strength to Hulk Smash, for instance. Hulk Smash is in your discard pile, and then when you play Beast, you can grab Limitless Strength, bring it back, you have a triple resource, and that's pretty good. It mitigates Hulk's low economy and his like inconsistent nature. So the inconsistency actually comes, I think, mostly from the 4 hand size and then the forced interrupt of when your turn ends, discard your hand. So I think that if you're looking at Hulk like objectively from how strong is this hero at max potential, he's probably very low on that list. But I don't think it's fair to say that Hulk is unplayable, which a lot of people go to saying that Hulk is completely unplayable, like don't touch the hero, useless. I don't think that's true. So, for instance, you can look up Joshi of Smeg's YouTube channel. There's a whole series where he goes through and he takes out every single villain from the Guardians campaign, which is notoriously the hardest campaign in solo. So he can beat Nebula, he takes out Ronan, and it's a good showing of what Hulk can do. He's playing an efficient aggression deck that basically just rushes down the villains because like Hulk is very bad at thwarting, as you can see from his 0 thwart stat. But that's not really what Hulk's trying to do. What Hulk is trying to do is just soak up damage and deal damage. And he can do that very well to the point that he can, if the cards lay right for him and you're playing a good deck for Hulk, he can take out Ronan on standard. Like, I'm not sure if he can, I don't know. I don't know if there's a build that would allow him to take out Ronan on expert. Like, I'd want to know if that exists, but I think it's pretty safe to say that you're not going to be playing expert with Hulk in general, especially in certain scenarios where you need a lot of thwart. It can be just a nightmare to deal with, but he's not unplayable. And so I think ChatGPT overestimated him a little bit, but the strengths that it points out with like what Hulk is actually good at is true. He is actually very good at these things, and I think it's important not to forget that. So, on to number 5, Spiderwoman. So, it says that Spiderwoman's dual aspect cards and pheromones' stunning confuse abilities provide great flexibility and control. Her versatility allows her to adapt to various situations, making her a solid choice in many scenarios. And I can't really argue with that at all. So, the cards it mentioned are pheromones, stun, just 2 cost, hero action, stun, and confuse an enemy. If you're not playing against a stalwart or steady villain, that's an amazing card. Just absolutely amazing card. And then if you look at Spider-Man or Spider-Woman's ability on the hero, it says superhuman agility interrupt. When you play an aspect card, Spider-Woman gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 defense until the end of the round. Limit once per round for each aspect. So if you're playing multiple aspects cards here, notice it's limited once per round for each aspect. You can get a big increase to the stats. So she's basic attacking and basic thwarting and defending for it a lot. And then also you have access to all the aspects in one hero. This is crazy. So like these cards that say that this is both a Spider-Woman card and an aggression card, that's really interesting. So you have attack events like deal 5 damage to an enemy for 2. Like you can think of the equivalent uppercut in aggression. It's the same thing but for 3 costs. So it's Venom Blast is better. And then Contaminant Immunity, heal 3 damage from Spider-Woman and give her a tough status card. That's an amazing card. Healing 3 health, really good. You don't have to flip to Alter Ego to get that 3 health and also a tough. Amazing card. Spiderwoman, extremely strong hero. And then also, if you look at the alter ego ability, you get to aspect build. You get to use 2 aspects in your deck. So it's similar to Adam Warlock in that you get multiple aspects, but it doesn't require you to only have like one of each card. But it does. But you basically choose 2. But basically any combo that you choose is going to be good, because like leadership justice, really solid. Leadership aggression, very solid. Leadership protection, like every combo you would go through, like all the permutations, they're going to be fine. You can find great builds for her that allow her to do many different things, which ChatGPT points out. Her versatility allows her to adapt to various situations, which absolutely true. I don't have like any problems with what ChatGPT said here. Like very based opinion. Solid take from ChatGPT here. Now on to number 4, Captain Marvel. It says Captain Marvel's high card draw and resource generation through Energy Channel and Alpha Flight Station provide strong consistency. Her ability to deal significant damage and heal herself makes her very resilient. So it's a little off base here. Like obviously, just if you look at and resource generation through Energy Channel, you read Energy Channel. It's not resource generation. It's a resource sink. You spend energy resources to put counters there, and then you can discard it to deal 2 damage to an enemy for each counter there. It's definitely not resource generation, so it just mixed up what it was doing there. But Alpha Flight Station, card draw and resource generation, yeah. So it's right about the card draw through Alpha Flight Station. It says action, exhaust Alpha Flight Station, choose and discard 1 card from your hand, draw 1 card, and if you're an alter ego, draw 2 cards. Which having a 1-cost support that's going to let you, in hero form, just manipulate your hand to be a little bit higher quality, or in alter ego, gets you 2 cards for the price of 1. That's extremely good. So you can discard the cards that you don't want, and then get 2 new ones, and then combining that with the commander ability in alter ego, you have a crazy amount of card draw. And then the energy absorption resource, just a triple resource similar to Hulk but for energy, allows her to afford cards way better than other heroes. She's one of the richest heroes in the entire game. It also makes a point to mention her ability to deal significant damage and heal herself makes her very resilient. So again, it's bringing up the point of like damage as a defense. It's like to minions and stuff, like being able to take those out is a very good defense move. And then healing herself, I'm assuming it's talking about rechannel here. Action, spend an energy resource and heal 1 damage from Captain Marvel, draw 1 card. So you spend an energy resource, which is going to be on a card that you hopefully don't really want to play that turn. And then in return, you heal 1 damage and draw a card. Limit once per round. That is an amazing ability. And I think it's maybe not talked about enough, because maybe I'm off base there, but it's stronger than I remember, at least. Like I obviously use it when I play her, but when I think about what's strong about Captain Marvel, I'm not really thinking rechannel is like an amazing why I want to play Captain Marvel, but definitely it's one of the better hero abilities in my opinion. Healing while you're in hero form and drawing a card is fantastic, and I think I was underrating this before seeing this. And yeah, overall, I think it's pretty on base here, but it's interesting to see that it messed up, like it misinterpreted what Energy Channel does. So just an interesting little quirk there. So in the number 3 spot, we have Quicksilver. I was not really expecting to see this one, but let's see what it says. Quicksilver's ability to ready himself multiple times per turn allows for tremendous versatility. His high action economy and the ability to both attack and thwart efficiently make him a formidable hero. And I don't disagree with any of that. Like, the ability to ready yourself all the time and then upgrade your basic stats and then like spread out what you're doing is really cool. And then the response says, super speed response, after you use one of Quicksilver's basic powers, attack, thwart, or defense, ready him. That extra ready is really useful, and he also has other ways to ready in his kit. So you'll see he has a bunch of copies of this card always be running, where you just get to ready him, and then that combos really well with friction resistance, where after you ready Quicksilver, ready this card, and then it has an action to exhaust it and generate a physical resource. So he's actually, if you can get set up where you have friction resistance and then always be running, and you play maximum velocity to get +2, +2, +2 until the end of the round, you can have some crazy turns. The interesting thing about him, though, is that he's a speedster, right? So you think he'd be really fast and you'd feel fast playing him. But in reality, it's more like he's a setup hero that has crazy turns, like probably more similar to like how Nova plays with Unleash the Nova Force. But the difference is like you have to set up, you have to get your friction resistance and then upgrade your stats. And then eventually later on, you'll have consistent turns where you're doing a lot. So like, in my opinion, I think this is better in multiplayer because ironically he's a little slow to set up, but then once he's set up, he'll consistently be outputting a lot and can switch between like thwarting a lot or attacking a lot because of those readies, which makes him very versatile. Like it says here, like high action economy and the ability to both attack and thwart make him a formidable hero, which I think is true, but I just don't think he's like number 3 in the game. But yeah, anyways, strong hero, interesting, but I don't think he's number 3. But everything it pointed out about what's strong about him is definitely true. And like later on, once you're built out, he's an incredibly strong hero. Now, coming in at the number 2 spot is Scarlet Witch. So it says, Scarlet Witch can manipulate the encounter deck and use powerful hex spells. Her ability to control the board state and mitigate threats with cards like Chaos Magic and Hex Bolt makes her exceptionally strong. So it mentions Hex Bolt twice, so let's read that. It's a 2-cost event that says hero action, discard the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. For each card discarded this way that has boost icons equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, it gets different effects. So for 0, it's deal 2 damage to an enemy. 1, remove 2 threat from a scheme. 2, draw a card. 3, place a status card on a character. So what's really cool about this is that basically any combo that you get is going to be good. So if you get 3 threes, you'll get to place 3 status cards. So you could, like, for instance, stun the villain, confuse the villain, and make yourself tough. That's amazing. Probably not going to get 3 threes, but if you get like 3 zeros, for instance, you can deal 2 damage to an enemy, deal 2 damage to an enemy, deal 2 damage to an enemy. 2 for 6 is really good, and then splitting it up into multiple instances allows you versatility, so you can like take out minions and also deal damage to the villain. Same thing with the thwarting here. So like if you get 1s, you get to remove 2 threat from a scheme. So like spreading your the thwart around, very good. And drawing cards, obviously very good. But then her other cards interact with that in a very interesting way. So Chaos Control says, interrupt, when boost icons on an encounter card would be counted, discard the top card of the encounter deck and count that number of boost icons on that card instead. So let's say, for instance, you get a 1, but you really don't, but there's nothing to thwart, like zero threat on the main scheme or something. You could discard that and then use a different one instead. And then she gets even more control when you get her crest out. So it says, when boost icons on an encounter card are counted, exhaust Scarlet Witch's crest, increase or decrease the number of boost icons on that card by 1 for this count. So that's incredibly versatile, right? So if you get 1, you can remove 2 threat from a scheme, deal 2 damage to an enemy, or draw a card. If you get 2, you get to draw a card, or place a tough status card on a character, or remove 2 threat. The only things you don't really want to get with the crest out is like 0 and 3, because then it limits your options. The ChatGPT makes a point here to mention Hexbolt twice, because the Hex spells and then Hexbolt, which you really want to be Hexbolting like all the time, because this is what her kit is built around. So in a sense, it can be like maybe a little boring if you don't want to be playing the same event all the time. But at the same time, every time you play that event, you get to interact with the rest of your kit, and then you get different effects out of it. So I think it's really fun, and then you get to manipulate the encounter deck a lot too. And then it also makes a point to mention Chaos Magic. It says, control the board state and mitigate threats with cards like Chaos Magic and Hexbolt. That makes her exceptionally strong. It's interesting that it says her ability to control the board state and mitigate threats, and then mentions Chaos Magic, because I don't really, like, yes, it is like a resource card, because it says play a card from your hand, ignoring its resource cost, cost, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck equal to that card's permanent resource cost. So you can play, like, for instance, like a 5-cost card for basically no cost. You just discard this card, throw some cards off the top of the encounter deck, and then you get whatever card that is. So, like, you can play Nick Fury with just Chaos Magic. That's very versatile. So in the sense, like, of that, you get to control the board state, or like play an Avengers Mansion for free on the first turn, something like that. But it's more so like resources, which it didn't really go into that detail. So it kind of, again, kind of similar to Captain Marvel, it like mixed it up again, which is interesting that like as the heroes are getting like higher up on the list, it seems to be like mixing up more stuff. I don't know. But anyways, Scarlet Witch, great hero. Yeah, number 2. I don't know, like, again, like, I don't, that's pretty high for Scarlet Witch, but also she's very strong. Okay, and in the number 1 spot, according to ChatGPT, is Doctor Strange. Like, I mean, who else could it have been? Everyone's been saying Doctor Strange is, like, the strongest hero ever since he came out, pretty much. But let's hear what it has to say. It says, Doctor Strange's Invocation deck is incredibly powerful, offering a range of game-changing spells. Cards like Winds of a Tomb for drawing 3 cards, Images of Icon for stunning all enemies, and Crimson Bands of Sidorak for stunning and dealing significant damage make him a top-tier hero. So, again, like, it's kind of funny, it mixed stuff up here. So, the Winds of a Tomb, drawing 3 cards, totally on base there, like, crazy spell. There was a game, there's an old clip on my channel of one of my friends using a deck I made for Doctor Strange where he drew 18 cards in 1 turn. He got to do Winds of a Tomb 3 times. Like, it was really cool. You should go check that out if you can find it. And then, but the Images of Icon for stunning all enemies. Yeah, so if we read Images of Icon, special, confuse the villain and remove 4 threat from a scheme. Place this card in the invocation discard pile. And I'm sorry, ChatGPT, but it just does not do that. It'd be nice if it stunned just all enemies for 1 cost, but, you know, it doesn't actually do that. I think it was just mixing it up with, like, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak and maybe, like, throwing around the tough statuses or something like that. Crimson Bands of Sidorak dealing significant damage, and stunning is very true. It's like 7 damage plus a stun. That's amazing. I thought it was also important to point out the Master of the Mystic Arts, because it says pay the permanent cost of the top card of the invocation deck, resolve its special, and place it back on top. So, like, obviously, like, Winds of a Tomb is an amazing target for that. You'll get to pay 1 to do Master of the Mystic Arts, and then you get to draw 6 cards, essentially. That's absolutely insane. Doctor Strange just has very game-breaking abilities that allow him to be that strong. But yeah, don't think there's any argument or dissent here with Doctor Strange, but it is interesting to note that, again, on the number 1 hero, ChatGPT got confused again, which I think that's pretty interesting. So, let's do a quick recap of everything we saw. Number 1, Doctor Strange. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. 3, Quicksilver. 4, Captain Marvel. 5, Spiderwoman. 6, Hulk. 7, Captain America. 8 is Iron Man. 9 is Black Widow. And then 10 is StarLord, which, I don't know, StarLord probably should have been number 1, but, you know, he's just my favorite hero. He's very strong. I don't know if he's actually number 1, but, like, his top tier builds, absolutely crazy to me. That's probably a discussion for a later video. I thought that was a really interesting experiment to do. Hopefully you did too. Yeah, I don't think it's really worth reading into the, like, actual order of the heroes, or like what heroes made it into the top 10 all that much, because it's clearly not, like, correct. I would definitely say that this is not the top 10 heroes in Marvel Champions. But what was really interesting to me was pointing out things that are really strong about these heroes, because, like, all of these heroes have, like, really unique things about their kits that ChatGPT picked up on and then presented. And then especially there was a few things, for instance, like Captain America's shield toss being mentioned as a defensive capability that was, like, a different way of looking at the game that I felt like I got some benefit out of, and then hopefully everyone else did too. Yeah, so if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the bottom. Is StarLord the strongest hero in the game? Is Doctor Strange the strongest hero in the game? I don't know. Let me know. Also, I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts about Hulk and I don't know, literally everyone on this list because I just find this topic to be really interesting. But yeah, anyways, stay zesty. See you in the next one.